Hi, everybody, and welcome to Unified, a podcast feed from First Church Belmont Unitarian Universalist. We'll be sharing sermons and stories, especially thematic content made new every week. We're so glad you're here, and for more information about who we are and opportunities to grow and deepen, swing by the church on Sundays or check out our website at uubelmont.org. And for now, enjoy this new content.
Community moves at the speed of trust. I heard this phrase spoken a few weeks ago. I was in Jamaica Plain with colleagues from the UU Urban Ministry. We were gathered in an old brick building to meet people from a nonprofit called City Life Vida Urbana. One of the folks on staff there, Ronel Remy, he was our tour guide. And he brought us first to a series of pictures near the front door. He pointed to each of the pictures, and he told us, "These are our saints." Ronel told us who each person was and why they were important to City Life, why they were considered a saint. There was the organization's founder, there was a person who led demonstrations, and there was a vital community organizer, among many, many others. We asked questions about these saints, and what began as a tour of this office became a meditation in their entryway about the importance of people coming together, or people coming together to work side by side. In the case of City Life, the work is about housing and fair housing laws. They support people threatened with eviction. They connect people with legal aid. Their formal name, City Life Vida Urbana, also gives some insight into the bilingual emphasis to their work. Through community meetings, legal aid, rallies, and all sorts of efforts, they work to change systems of oppression into systems that reach nearer and nearer to liberation. Systems that allow living, that allow life. Systems that evict injustice from the household of humanity. And as our conversation unfolded, Ronel, our guide, concluded with this line: "Community works at the speed of trust." There are moments in our lives when the energy of the space coalesces so strongly with the words shared. And this was one of those moments, a time that truly felt formative. I came alive to the story Ronel shared, and I'd like to imagine that he came alive just that much more as well when he shared. And to me, this moment evoked the importance of trust, of trusting one's story and trusting the people listening to hold that story. So much of who we are, whether as individuals or collectively, is formed by the stories we share. And to move one's narrative from a place within to a place outside of ourselves, well, that requires trust. It requires a trust so brazenly vulnerable, a trust that finds itself housed between the self and the other, a trust we are wise to provide sanctuary for. The formative experience, the place of residence, belongs neither to the teller nor the listener. It belongs to both. The necessity of trust becomes so incredibly aware of itself, and we, in turn, learn to trust. We learn this in community. Community moves at the speed of trust. This phrase Ronel shared that night at City Life, "I needed to know more." I left that night clinging to that phrase. I asked Ronel, "Did you just come up with that line?" He did not claim it as his own, but couldn't remember exactly where he had heard it. When I searched the phrase, I ended up in Adrienne Maree Brown's book, Emergent Strategy. A version of the phrase shows up with a citation. And in this citation, Adrienne Maree Brown notes that the phrase is Mervyn Marcano's remix of Stephen Covey's Speed of Trust concept. This remix that's referenced in the citation, though, has been hard to uncover. But the lack of definite connection with a citation is not exactly a problem, though, because, as Adrienne Maree Brown writes, lineage is both important to name and impossible to track. The complexity by which we arrive at community moves at the speed of trust does not cast a shadow, but instead illuminates the breadth of this sentiment as it is found today and yesterday and into the future. The limit of our language does not limit the boundless truth of this phrase. And so I name Ronelle Remy from City Life Vita Urbana in the cited language today as we encounter trust, as we encounter communities moving at the speed of trust. And I want to share a few examples of this phrase as it is lived out. And we start with part of our story here. On Wednesday, November 20th, only a few weeks ago, a group of about 24 people gathered outside this sanctuary for Transgender Day of Remembrance. We held candles as we read aloud the names and short biographies of the trans and non-binary people who were killed due to violence this past year. We spoke into the cold night names and memories of our trans siblings. As the traffic of the cars and the traffic of our lives slowly evaporated into the background, we centered the lives of folks who lived on the margins. We named their names. We shared what brought them joy. We went around in a circle, each voice picking up from the one next to it, speaking into existence one more time the sacred life of a sibling. When we gathered, though, our circle was not complete. But we couldn't know that, of course. Soon after we began reading the names, a handful of folks joined us. They would slowly approach our circle. And it's important to recognize the tension here. We were publicly lamenting the deaths of trans and non-binary people. And while we want to be a place of welcome, we also recognize the reality of this world. But I can tell you the faces of the people who joined us later, you could read the trust they had on their faces. You could read that they knew this was a gathering of belonging, that the candles we held were beacons of hope amidst despair. What they brought in themselves was met by those already gathered, and a sense held mutually, a deep desire to belong. And when our circle widened that night, when a new person would join, we would shuffle to make space. Then a person would hand their candle to the newcomer, then grab one for themselves from the pile in the middle. We put our trust in the abundance of light. On a night when we remembered our transgender siblings lost to violence, we took part in remembering what welcoming each other into a time and space of love means. Community moves at the speed of trust. And now we move to the soil. This is the story of the three sisters: corn or maize, beans, and squash. The three sisters is a term historically used by the Iroquois, but the method of planting and growing was used throughout what we now call Central and North America. In Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, "For millennia, from Mexico to Montana, women have mounded up the earth and laid these three seeds in the ground, all in the same square foot of soil. When the colonists on the Massachusetts shore first saw indigenous gardens, they inferred that the savages did not know how to farm. To their minds, a garden meant straight rows of single species, not a three-dimensional sprawl of abundance. And yet they ate their fill and asked for more and more again. The story of the three sisters is about a deep trust in the other, a deep trust that relies on the understanding that what one contributes to the other is vital for the survival of the community. The three sisters protect each other, they nourish each other, they grow together. And as they grow, they continue providing for each other. In fact, the growth of one helps the growth of the other. If one does not grow, the other is limited in its own development as well. This planting method starts with corn. A small mound is formed for the kernels to take root. Soon, beans are planted in the mound. The beans are useful because they absorb nitrogen in the air, which in turn they convert into nitrates that fertilize the soil. And the squash seeds go in last. As the corn grows enriched by the nitrogen, the corn stalk provides a sturdy support for the bean plant to wind around. As the squash grows, its large leaves cover the ground. This prevents weeds from overtaking the soil, and it prevents water from evaporating from the soil too quickly. Together, the three sisters grow. They grow and they sustain. Theirs is a mutual aid. There is a trust between these three plants, a trust that the resources they need can be shared, a trust that the resources they need can be provided by their siblings, a trust that they will protect each other. This community of plants harnesses the space between so that each participant in life is given the opportunity to flourish. Community moves at the speed of trust. And we end with a trip to the town of Bethlehem in Judea, a town that might sound familiar during this season of Advent. But this is a story of two women, one named Naomi and another named Ruth. This story comes to us from the book of Ruth found in the Hebrew Bible, and it concerns a mother named Naomi and her daughter-in-law named Ruth. Ruth had married a son of Naomi when that family was living in the land of Moab. This was where Ruth was born and raised. Ruth was a Moabite. Naomi, her husband, and her two sons, however, they were from Bethlehem in Judea. They had left Judea due to famine and went to Moab with a hope of a more secure food supply. Over time, we learn that Naomi's husband and her two sons died. With no close family bond and hearing that the famine had ended in Judea, Naomi decides to return to her homeland, to return to the town of Bethlehem. When Naomi sets off on this journey, she was joined by her two daughters-in-law, one of them Naomi, and both of them Moabites. One can imagine the struggle of such journey. At one point, Naomi turned to her daughters-in-law and said to them, "Go back." I think it is easy to imagine a person like Naomi, a person fully burdened with grief, with loss, a person frustrated on a tiresome track. I could be this person. I'm sure each of us could be this person at one point. We might become annoyed that there are other people around. We could turn to someone and say, "Leave me alone. Let me be alone." This is what Naomi is saying to Ruth, but Ruth does not go. Naomi exclaims to her, "Turn back. Why will you go with me?" But Ruth remained clinging. Ruth trusted Naomi. And Ruth speaks these words. She says, "Do not press me to leave you, to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." These words show Naomi that Ruth was committed to this shared journey, a journey that at its core was about a relationship that had formed over years, a relationship that included loss, and a relationship that required trust. Ruth clung to Naomi. And we learn in the second chapter of the book of Ruth a reason why Ruth did this. We learn this was about survival. And though the journey was dangerous for Ruth, an outsider in Bethlehem, so too was Naomi's survival at stake. An older widow now without family support, Naomi would not have the ability to take care of herself, to find food for herself. It is through Ruth that Naomi lives. Their trust in each other and their trust in themselves were necessities for survival. Ruth takes care of Naomi. Ruth gleans from the fields so that they both can eat. Naomi takes care of Ruth. Naomi helps raise Ruth's child while Ruth works the fields. The trust we place in each other is a trust that can allow many generations to flourish. Community moves at the speed of trust. We see in these stories that trust does not look like one thing. It can look like a group of people widening their circle to welcome more people in. It can look like different plants growing together and supporting each other. Trust can look like two people committed to each other's survival through long journeys. We see in these stories that trust operates at various speeds. And like the story I shared earlier, there is no one speed that works best. Trust can be measured in the time it takes to light a candle. Trust can be measured over the days and weeks it takes for plants to sprout and grow. Trust can be measured over generations of support. We see in these stories that community and trust go together. We see that seeking out connection requires a level of trust and that it will be welcomed. We see that community flourishes when we trust each other to contribute, to help each other in the act of living. And we see how the commitment of saying, "Your people are my people. Where you go, I will go." We see how that contributes to a community of care, of compassion, of finding within ourselves the capacity to trust. The journey we take together, this journey of life, is one in which we are the plants taking root. This is the life of growing together and trusting that we can do this together. Let us give ourselves the opportunities to gather in community so that trust can form. And from this soil of togetherness, from this vibrant way of living, might we flourish across generations. Generations that move closer and closer to liberation, that move closer and closer to community. We will get there at the speed of trust. We will get there. Amen.